The main character is Dishin, the strongest emperor in his world. No one can defeat him. One day, a portal to the real world opens in front of him, and the guy realizes that all this time he was the strongest in some drawn comics. Now you have to understand what kind of superpowers there are in real life. The actions of today's manhwa begin in a huge temple located in Dashan, or more precisely in Jiaogu. But these lands do not exist in the real world. Moving inside this luxurious temple, we watch a real celebration taking place inside. A bunch of waifus surround a handsome guy with white hair. Next, we watch as one of the waifus holding grapes in her mouth turns to His Majesty and invites him to eat these grapes. Another beautiful waifu watching this calls the purple-haired girl shameless for feeding the Majesty with her mouth. Meanwhile, an envoy enters the chambers of His Majesty and bows his head to notify that the envoy of the Sword Seekers, Jian Shan, is waiting for an audience. Sigma, with long white hair and an embrace with two beauties, briefly answers his servant to call the one who arrived right here. A few moments later, we watch as a newcomer enters the chambers and notifies that he has brought the Zhuanyuan sword, which belonged to the emperor himself. Sitting on his knees, the former Grandmaster reports that legends say that this sword was cast by the gods themselves. It combines the sun, moon, stars, mountains, and Sigma energy. The guy gets out of his luxurious jacuzzi filled with beauties and stands in front of the old man saying that he did a great job. The next shot we observe is the body of a real Greek god that belongs to our main character. He runs his hand over the Xuanyuan sword. A few moments later, the sword jumps out of its place and the old man, clearly plotting, pretends that everything is going according to plan. Next, this old man, using his technique of a white rainbow piercing the sun, directs the legendary sword directly at our main character. The sword flying straight into the head of our main character does not bother him at all. Even when there are a couple of milliseconds left before the collision with his head, he stands calmly. When the collision was about to happen, the old man lets out a heart-rending scream, telling the tyrant named Dishin to die. However, the legendary sword, which should have already made a hole in Dishin's head, stops and is not going to continue its route. Stopping Dishin and asks if this is a technique that the old man kept secret for many years, he notes that it is not bad, because he didn't even have time to notice. Next, the tyrant asks Master Jian what he thinks the problem is. He offers options such as a lack of strength or technique. At this moment, the stunned old man jumps away from our main character and says that the body is eternal and incorruptible, blaming the main character for always indulging in pleasures. The old man continues to not understand why the tyrant who did nothing for his strength continued to successfully master spiritual practices. At this time, Dishin, looking at this loser with an arrogant look, wonders why it doesn't dawn on everyone that the practices are as simple as eating. Next, Dishin, extending his hand, concertizes the violet energy and opens his palm in anticipation of something. A moment after opening his palm, the sword of our protagonist appears in it. The guy hoped that the fastest master of Shiki would be able to surprise him with something. Next, the tyrant makes a quick attack with his sword from top to bottom, thereby sending this old man flying. He adds that this old man turned out to be ordinary mediocrity. However, despite this, Dishin admits that the material of the legendary sword is indeed special, but there is no power in it, and it is not at all like the work of the gods. Next, the tyrant looks through the eyes of a hunter at the master, who was already ready to give up the ghost from just one attack from our protagonist. Falling to his knee, Grandpa says that even though his skills are inferior to others, and even if he no longer has a chance to avenge Ziki, he still had to try. Next, Grandpa realizes that at this moment he has no more options left. He gives up his spirit, but before his death he assures our main character that he will end badly. Meanwhile, Dishin does not experience the slightest emotion. He describes this whole scene as pitiful and throws the legendary sword to the floor. Next, our main character demands from his servants that they announce that Jian Shan died due to illness, and as a great master, he will be buried with all honors. The tyrant admits that this sword is indeed good, but for him it will be useless, so he orders this sword to be buried with the master. The concubines admire the master's strength. After our main character has dealt with a pathetic attempt on his life, he sits on his throne and ponders what he should do next. Sitting on the throne, he remembers that his father once told him that a magical bird sent a special child Sigma into this world. This child was able to master any technique that came his way, no matter how complex and painstaking it turned out to be. And when this Giga Chad, who could learn any technique, grew up, he became an emperor and reached the 13th level of mastery of spiritual energy. Since then, no one has defeated him. However, our main character understands that this guy from the legends cannot be found, because his hope is completely shattered when this sword appears, which has no power. Because of this, our main character concludes that legends remain legends. There are no magical birds, no gods, and no immortal cultivators capable of defeating him. The guy understands that he has reached such a peak that conquering and winning becomes a real routine for him, which only makes him feel tired and lonely. Suddenly, a huge explosion forms in front of our main character, which eventually turns into a portal. Dishin does not understand what the hell is happening. Rising from his throne, the Gigachad looks at this portal and assumes that this is the very gate to heaven that is spoken of in myths and legends. Looking at this gate that has formed in front of him, he understands that his form is unstable and he will collapse at any moment. He understands that there may not be another chance to enter. Next, our main character begins to walk into the portal with confident steps. He tells his waifu to convey that he ordered all his authorities upon the return of Empress Su. Standing in front of the portal, Dishin understands that this is a very risky step, but he simply cannot miss the opportunity to leave the world in which he has nothing left to do. Filled with determination from these thoughts, Dishin realizes that he really wants to find out what is on the other side, and a moment later, he enters the portal. After our main character enters this suddenly formed portal, everything around him begins to glitch, and we observe a semblance of a system failure. After some time, Dishin finds himself in some strange room in front of an ordinary computer desk. He finds himself in the modern world. Looking at the screen of a mysterious device, that is, a laptop, the main character reads a text that exactly describes everything that recently happened to him. In this text, it was written that after passing through the gate, Dishin discovers that information about civilization is floating in his memory. He understands that he finds himself in the future. Next, Dishin feels incredible excitement. He sees the title of the Manhwa Emperor Tyrant on the screen, and reading the text, he understands that every sentence describes his life. Sometime later, our hero reads the entire novel and realizes that this completed novel really describes his entire life from the beginning to this moment. Once again, looking at the site where various manhwas are located, he realizes that he really could get into the real world from the book. The main character grins, realizing that he is just a character in a novel. This is very strange, but he is going to take advantage of this since he is in the real world. After reading the novel and using critical thinking to draw conclusions about everything that happened, our main character follows the exit of the room. He is going to deal with everything. Opening the door, Dishin sees in front of him a picture of some nerd and glasses falling apart, just like in the movie Avengers: Infinity War, and behind him a girl is shaking. A nerdy guy with glasses and a plump build reaches out to our main character and says that the gods want to punish him, but he is not going to give up. Looking at our main character and continuing to dissolve, he says that he worked so hard for today, but he is not ready to accept such an end. In the following frames, we get to know this nerd whose name is Pan Wei, who is currently 37 years old. For many years, he was an ordinary internet writer who lived his boring life day after day, but 3 years ago something happened that greatly changed his life. After all, 3 years ago, he went to the snow-capped mountains of Tibet with a tourist group, and the last thing he remembered was a huge avalanche that came down from the mountains. He recalled the cries of people for help, which were drowned out by the sounds of falling ice and snow. At that moment, he felt all the insignificance and weakness of the human race. At that moment, this guy was swallowed up by a blinding white light that penetrated straight into his brain. It corroded his consciousness, and the fear of death occupied all his thoughts. But this chubby guy was lucky that day, because out of the entire tourist group, he was the only one left alive. He never could have thought that surviving after this could bring good luck. After all, after those very terrible events, this chubby guy with the appearance of a nerd found out that he had acquired a magical power called the Fantasy Eater. This incredible, amazing ability allowed him to magically summon any characters from any works. But unfortunately, this seemingly incredible ability had one caveat, which was that the summoned heroes of the works did not obey him. But it wasn't all over, because his ability allowed him to absorb all the power and memory of the hero in the event of his death. The guy understood that he couldn't be so arrogant as to think that he could become a hero, but he didn't need that, because he could simply absorb powers. Pan Wei understood that with the help of his incredible power, he could attract other things, such as imaginary events that would cause real chaos. He was not afraid of the consequences, because he was sure that he had the strength to take control of everything. He understood that his strength would be comparable to the strength of an entire country. The guy knew that there were other people with superpowers in this world, but before he perceived it as ridiculous rumors and did not attach any importance to it. But after receiving powers, he realized that this was true. He found out that most of the abilities were banal, for example, fire breathing, calling spirits, but his strength was above all. Looking at his computer screen, he realized that his powers were truly magnificent. because they had no limitations and had endless potential. The prerequisite for the appearance of his amazing power was the confidence of people that fictional characters could somehow end up in the real world. Even though there were many characters, making people believe in their reality was a very difficult task that worried Pang Wei. It took this nerd with amazing strength a very long time to come up with a detailed plan to realize his power. After some time, he realized that the best option for revealing his abilities would be to create a character with his own hands. He began creating the novel Emperor Tyrant. There were many conditions. It was impossible to overdo it with his power. It seemed to him that this was his limit, because if the power was too great, he would not be able to fully realize it. But making the hero too weak was also not an option. Then Pan Wei wrote 10,000 words every day for 2 long years, and finally finished his novel. After the novel was completed, he decided to leave the ending open-ended to spark debate among fans about whether the main character was able to enter the real world. The Emperor Tyrant novel was very popular because it was free, and it lived up to Pang Wei's expectations, as the novel had 10 million bookmarks and millions of likes. Everything went exactly according to this nerd's plan, because everyone around them really began to talk about the strange ending. Many wondered how this romance would continue. This chubby guy personally heard these discussions. He understood that despite the fact that everything was going according to plan, this was not enough. The next step was to break this circle. Then a bunch of fake comments appeared on the internet that the hero of this novel really appeared in the real world, and a bunch of fake people provided evidence. All these comments were the work of that same Pan Wei. Because he hired a bunch of bots to raise this topic higher in the discussion, he even managed to get into the top 10. Even at major events, they were surprised by the fact that the author of the novel was not invited to them. They all considered him mysterious, and someone for whom money and fame are just dirt. It was with the help of the created excitement that this guy tried to convince society that the hero of his novel could really break the fourth wall by getting into the real world. The guy looking through the news understood that fortunately, as long as his novel was popular, there would be those people who would believe in all this. There was just a little bit left. One day, on one of the most ordinary and unremarkable days, Pan Wei, sitting in his room, suddenly realized that he could begin the final step in his plan. Holding a mysterious sphere in his hands, the guy understands that the core that is capable of summoning the main character of our novel is already ready, and he can begin the finale of his plan. Pan Wei understood that he could only wait until he was ready to accept him. This would definitely cause a furor in the city. While the government would sort it out, he would reap the benefits. This guy understood that this should be so, but people are not as good as gods, and accidents still happen. Despite the fact that he prepared for this for 3 years, he failed. At this time, our main character with a muscular body with a low percentage of fat silently watched as the one who called him into this world completely dissolved. Looking at the place where this nerd had just recently been, the Sigma tyrant from another world understood that his strange memories belonged to this fat man because of whom he was here. After Pan Wei, having failed, dissolved into a song and flew away in the wind, Dixin took his time away from this to the girl in the cap who was shaking on her knees all this time. Next, our main character, out of nowhere, asks this girl in a cap if she dares to think like that. He calls her unsurpassed stupidity. Finding herself in front of Sigma, she raises her hands and, trying to save herself, says that it is none of her business and she knows nothing about it. However, Dixin understands that something is wrong here, because he has the memories of this fat man. He sits down on his knee and asks the girl if she is sure. After the tyrant emperor from another world shows with all his appearance that he knows more than she thinks, the girl begins to worry greatly. Next, the girl makes an excuse that she doesn't know anything, and the guy just suddenly disappeared. She says that they were not close. He owed her money, and she came to return it. Listening to how the girl is trying to fool her, our main character sits on the sofa and asks if she is not at all interested in who he is. The girl continues to hold her hands in front of her, and waving her head from side to side, claims that she is not the least bit interested in who this white-haired Giga Chad is. However, after a while, Dixin folds his hands and tells the girl to stop pretending, because he has Pan Wei's memories, so she should tell the truth before it's too late. The girl is shocked from where he has memories. She remembers that in the guy's notes there was an assumption about the nuance of his powers, in that the character can absorb his memories. Meanwhile, Dixin, possessing incredible sensitivity and critical thinking, notices how the girl's eyes were running around. He asks her what she was up to. The girl immediately begins to apologize for trying to deceive this guy. She introduces herself as Shang Xiaoyun and says that she is 18 years old and wants to tell her about her hobby. However, the guy interrupts this speech to this girl with a menacing look, telling her to come closer to the point and not talk her teeth into him. After the threat, The girl says that Manhwa hired her to promote the idea that the main character of his novel broke the fourth wall and moved into reality. She was engaged in comments. The girl was very angry due to the fact that this fat man only paid her in advance and did not pay the rest of the amount, which is why she hacked his address to take the rest. Next, Shang Sayun, pretending to be an innocent victim, says that she really came for the money because he himself insisted on his strength, but he died because he could not withstand the force. Thinking about what the girl said, Sigma analyzes it and after a while of thinking, confirms that the girl said the truth. However, the interrogation of the girl did not end there. The next step was that D-Sin told the girl to give at least one reason why he needed to leave her alive. Next, the girl, being on her knees, addressing this guy as His Majesty, says that she thinks that this fat man would plunge a knife into his back. The next thing this girl says is that Manhwa originally planned to train for a while, to make his body stronger and only then summon him. However, when he appeared in the middle of a noisy city with a stupid face, he would definitely get into big trouble. If he only stumbled once, Manhwa's plan would be crowned with success. Next, the girl told the Sigma guy that she had prevented the plan by breaking into his apartment in time to get her money back. And in order to persuade her, Manhwa invited her to show her his super abilities, which is why he used his super ability earlier than planned. But in the end, this idiot himself screwed up not only with the summoning meth, but also could not stop his ability. So the power consumed him and he died stupidly. Next, this girl made an even more ridiculous appearance and asked His Majesty whether she deserved to live. She impatiently waited for the tyrant emperor's answer. In response, the guy only asked if it seemed to this girl that she knew too much, because judging by the fat man's memories, she should not have understood his ability so well. At that moment, Sayun realized that her affairs were very bad, because she accidentally said too much in order to survive, and now it played against her. Next, this girl decided that she could tell even more, because this way her likelihood of survival would definitely increase. The girl explained that she knew a lot, because Manhwa had a habit of recording everything into the computer that she hacked. She found out not only the address, but the essence of the ability. After what has been said, the girl admits that returning the debt was just an excuse, but in fact, she came to make sure whether the powers of this fat man are real. Zhuan continued by saying that she came to team up to hit the jackpot, because she also has abilities that fit perfectly with the Fantasy Eater. The next step was that the girl in the cap asked His Majesty, or our main character Sigma, if he also had abilities. Next, the Sigma muscleman from another world was surprised that this girl had abilities. He ordered her to demonstrate them right now in front of him. Next, Zhuan, who saw the opportunity to survive, immediately agreed with her hand on her heart, after which she began to demonstrate the ability. After this girl began to demonstrate her powers, her body began to be surrounded by an incredible stream of golden fire. Next, around our main character, who was wearing only a towel, his chambers formed, which were frighteningly similar to his real ones. Having adjusted her cap, the girl warned her new master that these were indeed his chambers, but some details may differ. But according to the description of the fat man, it should be similar. Next, the girl announced her ability, which was to create holograms. She could create anything from the void. She was visible but intangible. This ability was ideal for creating videos. Xuan continued by saying that they can even start right now, because she has already chosen a couple of directions, because recently several novels similar to the Tyrant Emperor have appeared. Further, against the backdrop of amazing illusions, this girl in a cap declared that if they cooperate peacefully, then His Majesty can become the ruler of thousands of worlds from today. Meanwhile, the cold-blooded Dishin, looking at the crowd of illusions, said that her illusions are very plausible. They also hide reality so that even he does not see the shortcomings. But suddenly Sigma directed a stream of his purple energy at these pitiful illusions, and said that the only flaw in her technique was that it could not withstand the force at all. After the illusion of this girl was destroyed by a light blow from our main character, the guy declared that this was his first time here, and was not going to repeat Manhwa's mistakes. But Mr. Tyrant asked if she was going to force him to work for someone else's pocket. The girl immediately began to throw her hands to the side, saying that she would not do that. Hearing this girl's instant excuses, the guy scratched his chin and told the girl that she never lied to him, so this is worthy of praise. Next, Deason announced that due to the fact that he was in this world for the first time, he just did not have enough servants, which is why he bestowed this role on this girl. The girl is puzzled by her new status, but the Tyrant Emperor declares that despite her beauty, she is not as good as his beloved concubine, so he has no need to sleep with her. At first, the girl is dissatisfied with her new status, but then she understands that at least they are not going to kill her. And in addition, he is staying nearby, and this means her safety. Suddenly this girl, after all the positive thoughts about what happened, is visited by a sharp feeling that tells her that she is missing out on something important. A few seconds later, Mr. Sigma Dixin uses some kind of spell right at this girl's back. Although she realized that something was wrong, she did not have time to do anything. The girl wonders in bewilderment whether they really used what she thinks on her. Dixin confirms her guesses by saying that he used the technique of cutting out the heart. Dixin explains his action by saying that he cannot allow his servant to be willful. The girl understands that if she disobeys, she will experience terrible pain. Xuan understands that theoretically there is a way to resist this spell, but she also understands that she cannot do it at all. Further, after the Gigachad receives his first servant, he leaves somewhere to the side, giving the girl an order to prepare him a robe and bring him food and wine. Tears begin to well up in the girl's eyes because up to this point, she was counting on a partnership, but in the end, she was demoted to a maid. The next eye begins with showing us the planet Earth, because this planet is home to several billion people, a real cradle of civilizations. Of all the great civilizations existing on Earth, the Zhengzhou civilization has the longest history. Following the legends about how Yandi and Huangdi fought for the throne, how the warlike Zhou people destroyed Zhou and other well-known stories, the ruling dynasties of Zhou continued to replace each other. All this continued until the last traditional feudal dynasty, Shun, fell into decay. It was swept away by modern industry, and the inhabitants welcomed a new era. The Zhengzhou Empire is a modern state with a constitutional monarchy. It is one of the greatest countries on the planet at the present time. All of the above is the history of this world. It fully corresponds to the information that entered the consciousness of our main character at the moment of crossing through those very gates. Dixin understands that during his life he conquered the whole world and created a great empire. But in the end, all this turned out to be just a fictional story of some fat man. According to Panwei's memories, he is now in the city of Shenshui, where all kinds of criminal gangs are squabbling among themselves like dogs. Panwei moved to this city only a year ago. He planned to take advantage of the unrest in the city to deal with our main character. After all, in order for the Fantasy Eater's ability to work, the summoned character and the owner of the ability were not too far away, otherwise he would not receive the power even if he died. Analyzing this whole situation with his critical thinking, Dixin understands that this fat man was a big-headed guy, but Shang Xiaoyun accidentally ruined his plan. Apparently, she is his lucky commander. Dixin, continuing to rummage through his laptop, continued to think that when passing through the gate, he did not receive any mention of his powers, but after searching, he found quite a lot of information. However, despite the fact that there was a lot of information on the forums, it was all very confusing, so it was difficult to figure out what was the truth and what was the lie. Although his new servant Shang Xiaoyun has superpowers, her knowledge is very limited, so it is difficult to understand this matter. Meanwhile, Dixin remembers how recently he told the girl that Panwei awakened his superpowers after an avalanche descended on him. He asked how the girl received her abilities. Xuan replied that last winter she went to the hot springs and she accidentally fell asleep in the water, and after almost dying in the hospital, she realized that she had superpower. Next, our main character asked the girl if he correctly assumed that the condition for obtaining superpower could be resurrection after death. The girl could not give an answer, because she also wanted to know she had all sorts of supernatural things since childhood. She also tried to find information, but could not. After talking with his servant, the guy wondered what his real strengths are in this world, because according to official information, he is capable of fighting the army alone. But if we take into account all the information that he found on the internet, then the situation changes greatly and his strength is nothing. Looking at the city at night, he understands that most people on the internet are braggarts, and the information is unreliable. It cannot be completely trusted, so you need to check your strength manually. Next, Daishin's servant tells him that she bought clothes for him and booked a table in the most luxurious restaurant, and a luxury car is waiting for him on the street. However, Dixin replied that he had nowhere to rush, so he asked the girl to show him the surroundings and let the car follow them. The girl was surprised but obeyed. After some time, we observe a luxurious limousine in which our main character arrived with his only maid. Xuan gets out of the car to open the limousine door for her master and inform him that they have arrived at the place. This time, she addressed him as the boss. The girl realized that she almost misspoke. She was very glad that Dixin allowed him to call himself boss, because it would have been awkward for her to call him emperor. A moment later, we are simply watching a gorgeous guy come out of a limousine. His appearance is irresistible. Everyone around is surprised by his unimaginable appearance. Xuan, walking behind, is surprised that this guy doesn't understand how outstanding he was created. Even just walking down the street, all the traffic stopped. Suddenly, a guy in a Sigma suit orders his servant to go ahead in order to show him the way. The girl immediately runs up to him to fulfill the request. Then a ton of negative remarks are showered on the girl. Everyone says that this handsome guy has such a useless assistant, while others wonder if such ugly people are even found. A couple of moments later, our main character with an irresistible appearance enters a luxurious restaurant, throwing the door open in front of him. Inside the restaurant, he is immediately greeted by a girl with outstanding shape. The guy's servant asks him to take them to a separate room. They wrote on the internet that the manager of this restaurant is just a sweetie. Next, the girl with huge rice buns asks our main character to follow him so that she can show him his armored luxury room. After Xuan enters this luxury room, she watches as this girl rolls up to our main character, leaning towards him and holding a glass of wine in her hand. A girl in a luxurious red dress asks the guy if he washed his hands, because she came on behalf of the restaurant to pour a glass of wine for Mr. D. Next, this girl carefully opens a bottle of wine with her equally elegant fingers. Our main character's servant, or Xuan, leans over to Dixin and says that this girl is clearly interested in him. She asks him if he is going to leave her for a private conversation. Dixin, in response to this, briefly replies that this girl with outstanding forms has already left him her phone number. Xuan is surprised that the girl did it so directly. Next, the girl in the cap asks her master if she has a chance to become his concubine. Dixin asks her how he can like such vulgarity. Dixin continues by saying that in order to become his woman, it is not enough to have appearance. In addition to this, she must be full of dignity, grandeur, and fearlessness. The girl asks the emperor if he was quoting someone right now because it doesn't look like him. The guy replies that he needs to ask Pan Wei because he is the hero of his short story. 5 minutes later, Xuan leans over to Dixin and asks him, since he ended up in this world, if he has any goals. He in turn replied that he is still thinking about it. Next, the girl begins to try to say something with gestures, but she is not sure because she does not know whether she can say it without consequences. However, Sigma, with a calm expression on her face, still gives permission to this girl to say what she wanted. Then the girl answers as if she were rehearsing. She says that living in this world is not easy because their country is strong, but everyone is still afraid of a kitchen knife. And of course a nuclear bomb. She is worried that he will want to restore the Shang dynasty. She has a slightly immature assumption that they can start a company. Xuan continues by saying that with his statecraft skills, he will become a tycoon in a matter of minutes, because a business empire is also an empire. Suddenly the girl realizes that this might sound like belittling Di Xin. She is not saying that he is not strong enough. She is just worried about whether he can withstand a nuclear strike. Then, after a few moments, Di Xin interrupts Xuan, saying mysteriously that someone has finally appeared. The girl looks around, saying that the food has not been brought yet. The next moment, the huge glass sharply breaks and a sniper bullet flies through it, which is aimed straight at the head of our main character. After the fragments fly straight at them, even the girl almost instantly jumps up from shock, and Dixin continues to calmly sit in place as if a bullet was not flying at him. The next moment, the guy, without much difficulty, catches the bullet right next to his head, with just a few milliseconds left before the collision. After the bullet was caught without much effort, Di Xin, without interrupting the Muning, looks at where this bullet came from in search of who did it. Possessing incredible eagle vision, the guy immediately notices a guy with a sniper rifle who continues to be on the roof of the neighboring building opposite. After this sniper sees that this guy just caught a bullet, which is impossible for a human, the sniper wonders what kind of monster is sitting at the table. With the next movement, our protagonist throws the bullet back to the sender with incredible force. The bullet moves with incredible speed and precise trajectory. In addition to amazing speed and strength, the bullet flies directly into the optical sight of this sniper's rifle, leaving him no chance to survive. Looking at the already dead sniper, the guy admits that this man waited for the perfect moment, just when he could have been distracted. Getting up from his chair, Dixin says that he is sorry that this man was not able to kill him. At this time, the dumbfounded girl watches the pathos of our main character. The girl, who has not yet managed to understand what happened, asks our main character what it was. She asks if he was attacked. He replies that they tried to kill him, but failed. Next, Dixin makes a quick dash towards the girl in the cap and grabs her by the waist, after which he prepares to jump through the broken window. After Dixin finishes preparing for the jump, he makes a jump of incredible height and an incredible view of the city opens up to him and his servants. The target of our main character's jump was the roof of a neighboring building opposite from where a shot was fired in his head. After a few moments, they reach the roof. After these two carefully land, the girl is shocked that the sniper who shot just a minute ago was already lying dead on the ground. Not understanding what is happening, Xuan approaches the body of the dead guy and asks our main character if he really just stopped the bullet and then sent it back to his head. Next, Di-sin grabs the rifle from which he was shot in the head and says that he only wanted to threaten this guy, but he was unlucky. After hearing this, the girl is silent for some time, but then she spreads her arms to the side and stars appear in her eyes. She screams that this technique was excellent. Xuan clenches her fists and rejoices at how great it is that she came to Shenshui today, because she has never felt like this before. This day was amazing. After all, on this day, this girl saw the power of this amazing guy's superpowers, and also spent the whole day in luxury that she could not even dream of. Meanwhile, at the place where these two had just recently had dinner, there were guards with machine guns and a woman who served our main character. They did not understand what had happened. Besides all the cool events that happened today, Xuan is happy that she had dinner at a luxurious restaurant without spending a penny and saved 20,000. Meanwhile, Di-sin, looking at his servant, smiled slightly and said that it seems that this girl is not at all afraid of blood and death because this quality is necessary for his servants. The girl further explains her reaction by saying that she often watches Telegram channels, but today she sees a dead man with her own eyes for the first time. Examining the sniper's corpse, the girl could not find anything that would help identify this man. She understood that this sniper was a professional. However, what worried the girl most of all was the purpose of spying on them. Di-sin answers briefly that it happened because of Pan Wei. He further explains to the girl that Pan Wei recently took out a loan and announced a monetary reward for his head. He did not intend to kill directly, but if he decided to hide, then in this case, these killers would not have left Di-sin alone. This once again proves that that same nerd was a very big-headed guy. Hearing this, the girl takes up her cap, and she suddenly realizes that everything said means that there will be other attempts to kill Di-sin. Concerned, Xuan suggests that our main character change his appearance in order to get rid of the mercenaries because these killers will cause trouble, but the guy is against it. Next, Di-sin asks the girl if she thinks the head of this state, Zhongzhou, or the ruling family would be afraid of an assassination attempt. Then he awaits an answer. The girl replies that she thinks that they are too high. All the power is in their hands and no one would dare cross their path, Di-sin asks. Then why should he be afraid? Di-sin continues saying that as long as he demonstrates that he is a Sigma and his powers, then no bandit or mercenary will dare to touch him. Emperor Tyrant, looking at the dead man, says that he was going to leave him alive so that he would spread rumors, but he was unlucky. But murder might work even better. Suddenly, the servant of our main character asks if this is the reason why he asked her to specially take him through the streets in order to attract as much attention as possible. The guy confirms. Next, Di-sin approaches the edge and looks at the amazing view of the city. He says that it is already late, and there is dirt all around Pan Wei's house, so he orders them to find a place to stay for the night. A few moments later, we watch as the two find a place to stay for the night in some random hotel. They stand and book a room. Next, the girl at the reception hands these two a piece of paper and states that this is their identity card. She also wishes her to spend a wonderful night with this gentleman. Taking the ID card from the girl's hands, Xuan is very embarrassed because these words sound very strange to her perception. A few moments later, we watch a girl enthusiastically playing some game and chatting on Discord with her friends. Her friends assume that she disappeared from the internet for several days and went to Shenshui because she went on a date. But she makes an excuse by saying that she came for money. She tells her friends that right now she can't explain everything in detail, but she won't be back anytime soon. Meanwhile, Di-sin calls the girl, and the girl leaves the call. In the next scene, we watch our main character taking water treatments while in the bath, while Xuan gives him a back massage. Next, the girl asks her master if she's okay massaging his toned back. She's so worried that she starts to stutter. However, the guy arrogantly rolls his eyes and leaves a stern but honest review of the massage, saying that she massages very clumsily. He asks her to stop. The girl clearly did not ignore this remark. Moving a little away from Di-sin, she invites him to find a professional masseuse for him. However, the guy replies that he is not interested in vulgar, dirty girls who are unworthy of touching his body, and Xuan did a good job today and he has no complaints. Next, we watch as the girl says that she doesn't want to contradict, but her money is not enough to maintain this standard of living for a long time. It's enough for a month. The next phrase clearly shocks you. The main character says that in this case he should give her a gift, then he demands to take off the towel. From such a sudden and strange request, the girl immediately blushes and becomes embarrassed and repeats what her master asked her to do. The girl clearly thinks that this is the end for her and Mr. Di-sin will stick his sword into her delicate sheath right now. She mumbles that he is in a hurry and she is not ready yet. However, the young gentleman clarifies his request by saying that he is going to hand over the equipment, and because of the towel it will be easy for him to make a mistake. The girl becomes even more embarrassed. Standing in front of the girl, Mr. Di-sin says that as soon as it got dark, his servant thought about the vulgar. He reminded him that he was not interested in such trifles. Pulling off her towel, the girl turns around shyly. Looking at the tyrant emperor, she justifies herself by saying that she is a girl, and he embarrassed her. Coming out of the bath, Dixin asks Xuan not to say such nonsense anymore, but instead to put down his towel and sit down to transfer the technique. A few moments later, our main character approaches the girl from behind and, pointing his hands at her, begins transferring the technique. Everything around is in blue flame. At this moment, the girl feels divine. Like after winning Fortnite, all her fatigue is relieved by her hand. She asks if the master is transferring chi energy to her. The guy, observing the girl's reaction, says that the influence of chi works on her. Because his maid should not be weak, first he will unblock her energy channels. And after opening the energy channels, he will give her a technique that she can quickly master, but she should practice. The girl thanks His Majesty. The transfer of technology took a whole 15 minutes. The girl thinks that it was not in vain that she thought that by following him she would be safe. The girl's soul was cleansed. Next, our main character Sigma tells the girl to repeat after him, because it is easier for a beginner to understand this when he says it out loud. At this time, the girl is unable to continue the procedure because she feels too much pleasure and falls to the floor trembling from this pleasure. The main character understands this because when the main character first receives chi energy, he feels very unusual, so this is normal. Then he asks the girl to get up and continue. Then, according to Dixin's order, the girl rises again and sits next to our main character and continues to receive equipment over the next 2 hours. The next shot is of Xuan's sad face, because even after more than 2 hours have passed, she still cannot accept the technique. She feels stupid. Meanwhile, even Dixin does not understand why it is not working, because he uses the Baiyuan treatise with the help of which even children master it in a couple of hours. Looking at the girl's body and her chi energy, the guy understands that Shang Sayun is quite smart, but until he transferred the energy, there was not a drop of it in her. Suddenly, our main character comes to the conclusion that the techniques of this world are simply not applicable to people from this planet. He apologizes to the girl, saying that he miscalculated. The girl suggests to the gentleman that she practice later herself because she needs to try harder, but Dixin says that the reason is that this technique is from a fictional world. And this in turn means that this technique simply cannot be applied to people from the real world. The girl is very upset. But because of this girl's stubbornness, she thanks her master, saying that even though she cannot train, having received the technique is like receiving a new body. Mr. Dixin coughs into his hand and says that this is only part of the reward. He asks the girl what else she wants. Seeing the generosity of her master, the girl decided not to waste time on trifles. She said that in fact she wanted money, power, and men with all her heart. The muscular Sigma is surprised by the girl's ambitions, but because she is young, he cannot give her men, and the authorities cannot give her in half an hour, so he tells the girl to wash herself. And when the girl finishes the water procedures, she will return back to the master's room, and he will tell where she can get the money. After this girl finishes her water procedures, as the master said, she returns to the room and notifies her master about this. Dixin, who is sitting on the sofa at this time, tells the girl to come here and read the post that is open on the laptop that is located on the table. Sitting down at the laptop and looking at the open tab, the girl watches how the forum is heatedly discussing the fact that the Emperor is a tyrant of bullshit, which is no match for the Queen of the Moons. However, our main character, maintaining his arrogance, says that the author of this post is the so-called Queen of the Moons herself, or the one who pretends to be her. And if it really turns out to be the Queen of the Moons herself, our main character, looking at Juan, says then she will receive the desired money. Meanwhile, the course of events moves forward one day. Night gives way to daytime sky. We are in Shenshui, Eastern District number 4. We watch as some thug turns to the head of Zhang, asks him to do him a small favor. He committed a violation and angered the Blue Dragon. He needs cover. Next, we see on our screens the head of the Eastern District himself, number 4. With a plump build, he turns towards the thug. The guy continues to ask for help, saying that he needs cover for a maximum of 2 or 3 days, and when everything is ready, he will immediately leave and not disturb him. Bowing his head in front of this official, the guy assures him that when everything is over, he will definitely be able to pay him for it. Next, the head of the Eastern region, arrogantly looking down at this guy, says if he really committed a small crime, then he will lend him a helping hand. A moment later, we see a crowd of some men running out from behind this same head of the Eastern 4th District. This official says that what this guy did this time is no longer a minor violation. The guy, entering a state of anger, screams heart-rendingly, asking who ratted him out, but it's too late because he has nowhere to run. However, despite the fact that this thug is in the minority, he gives a worthy rebuff to these bald criminals, and besides, he is unarmed while these scoundrels are with knives. The guy goes into berserker mode and continues to chop off one bald head after another with his bare hands. The bully behind has already begun to reflect on his life. The new pressure of the running crowd notices that this guy is very good in a fight. Another guy from the crowd says that he was a gangster and made some connections with the head of the mafia. But now this guy tried to go ashore, thereby finding himself in trouble. He made connections and considered himself cool. He even dared to touch a gang of blue dragons. A crowd of bald hooligans who wielded bats and bladed weapons continued to run towards this guy because he stole what belonged to their boss and they must deal with him. However, there was one more nuance. For some reason, this bunch of bald barbarians needed this guy alive, so the battle became even more complicated. Next, we watch as a muscular thug who is about to escape extends his right hand to the wall and prepares a blow with his left hand. A moment after preparing the blow, this man carries out a destructive blow of the 8th level, which easily breaks out the wall as if it were made of foam plastic. Despite the fact that behind this wall there was an exit to the street, this crazy guy did not stop and a moment later jumped out of the skyscraper. After that, after some time in flight, this guy landed on the asphalt without damage and took a superhero pose. From such a powerful landing, a curtain of smoke formed around him. Looking at his hand, this thug realized that after such a powerful blow, he needed to recover. Suddenly, a woman with blonde hair and a leopard print top walks onto the stage and applauds the incredible level 8 punch of this bruiser. In front of us stands the head of the gang of blue dragons. This girl's name is Long Ching, and she was waiting for the guy with her chained dogs. After a couple of moments, the girl takes off her jacket, throws it to her servant, and asks the thug, how about he show a couple of techniques again? Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted, and we observe the same luxurious limousine with which Di Shin and his servant move. The girl continues to search for information about the Queen of the Moon, but it is difficult for her because some people tried hard to carefully cover their tracks. But the search continued. Suddenly, Xuan turns to His Majesty saying that she found the IP address of the author of the post. It leads to a house that is owned by a blue dragon. There is a high chance that it is her. Having heard the information from his servant Sigma, with a calm expression on his face, asks Xuan if she knows who Long Ching is. Xuan, in response to this, adjusts her cap and says that after searching for information about her, she only found out that all this time it was a woman. The girl continued the story by saying that Long Ching is the only daughter of the previous head of the Long Ho gang. There were high hopes for her, so she was raised as a battle master. Her father created movie characters based on her image and filmed them to form her reputation. He also conducted various trainings. She is good in all aspects of combat. Meanwhile, while the thug was getting kicked in the face by this martial arts queen, Xuan was ready to tell the most important information about this girl. Apparently, this girl was also one of the few who had some kind of superpowers. Meanwhile, we watched how, after Long Ching took on her true appearance, she easily dealt with the poor thug who at that moment became a dwarf for her. Then the course of events is interrupted, and we move to the headquarters of the Blue Dragon, which is hidden from prying eyes because it is located underground. Meanwhile, Long Ching, sitting behind her chair, is talking on the phone with the head of Zhang. She asks for forgiveness for the fact that they made a noise while they were catching the thief. The girl continues saying that as compensation she left a small gift on his table. She asks the official to accept it. The head of the district forgives her. Meanwhile, the conversation is interrupted, and we observe that behind this girl in a leopard print top is the same thug who is sitting tied up on a chair. Approaching one of her people, the woman asks about the results of the interrogation. She is informed that he confessed to the theft, but he does not say where he hid the stolen goods. Meanwhile, Long Ching, surprised by the stubbornness of this idiot, takes out his phone and decides to rummage through it in search of answers that interest her. The next thing the thug sees on the phone display shocks this painted martial arts star. Having unlocked the phone, she sees that there is only one tab open in the browser, in which there is the very novel from which our main character came. After this, a girl with blonde hair approaches a large guy and shows him her phone and asks if he reads novels. After interrogating the guy who was beaten, he doesn't understand the essence of the question, but a little later he answers that he really reads, and what does he get from this information? Then the girl, without further ado, hits the man sitting on the chair with all her might right in the stomach. She says that this shows what kind of trash he is. After the blow, the girl begins to call this novel garbage for idiots, because everything that happens in it is nonsense. The guys from the gang do not understand why she hates this novel. Next, the girl says that she remembers how in the novel, they wrote that Di Shin used a dragon strike that had a force of several tons, and its speed was close to the speed of sound. It is not clear why the girl, embittered by this fact, begins to make a barrage of blows at the poor fan of the novel. She says that she can make 10 blows in a minute, devaluing the novel. Next, This arrogant bitch looks at the guy who was beaten by himself and mocks him because he passed out after a couple of blows. It's obvious because he read the Tyrant Emperor. Suddenly a wall breaks through into this viper of a gang of blue dragons, but the woman does not immediately understand this because the wall was easily broken in a second. Because of this powerful blow that broke the wall, a smoky curtain rises around. A dark silhouette emerging from the smoke asks who just poured shit on people. Those who easily broke through the wall into this viper were the Tyrant Emperor Dishin himself, instead of with his servants who, standing behind him, confirm the presence of the stench. Turning around, the girl is surprised by the unprecedented audacity of those who showed up with such noise in the territory of the blue dragons. She asks them if they confused the shores. Xuan, in turn, asks if they threw mud at her master behind his back. She asks the girl if she gave her back in front of the emperor himself. Then the girl stops and, pointing her hand at our main character, says that right now in front of them is the emperor of the great empire, Shang Dishin, in person. However, everyone around is just ashamed of such a performance, because no one believes that in front of them is really a character from a fictional novel. But when this girl realizes that these two are talking in all seriousness, she begins to laugh, saying that if he is Dishin, then she is a Buddha. Next, this girl asks the guy who was introduced as Dishin whether he has damaged his brain to so brazenly break into the gang's territory with his cosplay of Dishin. However, our main character's servant does not take this woman's ridicule seriously. Instead, she takes out her phone with her post and asks if she published it. Taking a closer look, the girl with blonde hair recognized her post on the forum and confirmed that it was she who published this post. After Xuan received the coveted confirmation, the girl expressed her joy and then demanded that she give her the promised money. Then the master's servant took out her phone to reread the post, because with this post she caused damage to the reputation of His Majesty, and it is also worth adding moral compensation here. After his calculations, Xuan shows the screen of his phone with a calculator open and tells the girl that she must pay them exactly 10 million. After this girl's presentation, everyone around except the blonde begins to laugh loudly at the absurdity that is happening right now. The blonde raises her hand and says that she understood what they want. She gives a sign to her guys that they can leave and she herself will deal with them. As they leave, members of her gang ask what's wrong. They also say that this couple is crazy. Everyone is sure that they have problems with their brains, but their strength is fine. After all the members of this girl's gang leave, our main character and this blonde are left alone in this room. Meanwhile, our main character's servant is hiding in the corner. Adjusting her leather glove, the blonde says that she honestly doesn't understand what's going on in the minds of such crazy fans like him, because his excuse is simply ridiculous. Meanwhile, Sigma in a cool suit says that he is Dishin, and he didn't come here for justice, he just needs money now and he saw her post. Turning her head, the blonde asks this guy if he really needs money, but she suggests discussing this after their fight. Next, this arrogant blonde swings and makes a dash towards our main character, and is about to deliver a powerful blow. However, our main character blocks this blow without even moving, because her blow stops as if it had hit the wall. The girl also understands that something is wrong here. She noticed that this technique is very similar to the aura of a dragon. She believes that this strange guy only continues to act out the role. Using her combat intelligence, the girl concluded that he was creating the illusion of Dishin's real ability with the help of his other ability. The guy tells the blonde right during the fight that she already knows very well about Zhuan Yuan's technique, but she continues to talk about some kind of superpowers, which is funny. Our main character continues to say that there is no point in hiding his techniques. The blonde girl continues to think that this guy is damn well into the role. The girl continues to not believe that in front of her is really Dishin. She asks how his idiotic dragon strike can exceed 1 ton in strength and have great speed. Next, our main character decides, instead of words, to demonstrate his dragon strike in action, so that this little blonde will have all her questions eliminated. This blow, which really has a striking force of about a ton, sends the girl, or rather her tailbone, on a blind date. The blow was really delivered at the speed of light. Next, the guy surrounded by an incredible shield turns to the girl and says that, of course he can hit the enemy with a blow of just a few tones at high speed. Not understanding what's wrong with his dragon strike, the Tyrant Emperor Dishin asks the blonde who is chained to the stone wall. When the smoke cleared, we watched as this girl had already changed her form and she became like a dragon. Watching this, our main character was slightly surprised because he had never seen a dragon like this person in person. Having received great damage, the girl thinks that she underestimated this guy. She thought that this man's ability to control energy and close to him would be weak. Having recovered a little, the girl compares the blow she received with a shot from a rifle, but she tells our main character that this is not the speed of sound. Next, a girl with a dragon-like form will attack our hero, making incredibly fast attacks, but all of them do not pass through Dishin's shield. This blonde continues to throw punches from all sides in the hope that this shield has a weak side that will not withstand her blow. She further says that even though he can attack with high speed, he will not have enough reaction to evade her attacks. She also remembered the incident from the beginning of the manhwa. Our main character looks sharply at this girl who continues to strike, and with her gaze seems to say that she was in vain to touch upon the moment when he did not react to the sword. In the next moment, Dishin seems to instantly disappear, and the blow of this blonde hits right at the place where our main character was located a millisecond ago. In search of her opponent, the girl tries to quickly look back to catch the guy by surprise, but she herself finds herself in a terrible situation. Turning back, she sees how our Sigma is already behind her. Besides this, he has almost made a blow. He tells her that she knows nothing about wielding a sword. Before the strike, he explains to the girl that in fact he can dodge at any moment, but he does not have such a habit because it does not correspond to his tactics. Next, our main character's downward kick lands right on target, and he forces the girl under the pressure of crushing power to be slammed into the ground. Dishin also adds that his imperfect body is his best defense, which allows him to win in any battle. Next, the Giga Chad gets tired of continuing to fight with this viper, so he increases the power of his blow, thereby sending the girl to dig diamonds in the mine. A simple kick was so strong that it created a hole with a depth of at least 5 meters. Dishin watched the girl lying at the bottom. Mr. Dishin warns this girl that he has already blocked all her key points, so she will just lie there. The girl really cannot move. Elegantly descending into the pit, the guy says that he doesn't understand something, why, if they never knew each other, she is so hostile towards him. The immobilized girl replies that she has nothing to answer, because according to the local rules, having won, he can do whatever he wants with her, even kill her. She continues to think that this is a fan. Meanwhile, Dishin says that insulting the ruler is indeed a mortal sin, but he does not kill everyone indiscriminately. Moreover, he admires her strength. After this phrase, our main character throws a seal at the girl's tailbone. He immediately answers the question in advance by saying that this is a spell for a cut-out heart. In the next frame, our main character points his index finger at the girl lying on the ground and asks her if she agrees to become his subordinate. The girl even now cannot understand that this is the real Mr. Dishin in front of her. She wonders where he mastered the same spell as Dishin. Meanwhile, the gang members who are waiting all the time, one of them swears because he did not take a gun with him, because it would have made a hole in the blonde guy's head. The second bandit, meanwhile, reassures the past one by saying that everything below is rattling and shaking, so this person is definitely not ordinary. Next, looking at the luxurious limousine, one of them wonders when their boss managed to buy the car, but the second says that their boss ran out of money. Meanwhile, we return to the base of the Blue Dragons, and Juan joins this performance and approaches her master and the lying blonde. Next, the girl in a disdainful tone tells Dishin that she still cannot move. She still looks at him as a fan. After this, the first servant of our protagonist slaps the girl on the head, saying that from now on she must call the guy her master. After this, the girl, already with a bump on her forehead, treats our main character as her master and again tells him that she still cannot move. Meanwhile, a very stupid girl continues to think that this psycho is too much into the role. She understands that she needs to get into the role in order to be saved. Next, our main character, with a wave of his hand, removes the blockage of body points with his chi energy and warns the blonde so that she remembers how to contact him. After a couple of moments, the girl jumps to her feet and is surprised that the guy, with one wave of his hand, restored her ability to move again. Suddenly, the girl is visited by disturbing monsters. She does not understand what kind of monster is standing in front of her right now and what he wants from her. Next, our main character tells his servants that this place is too broken, so they will go to a cleaner place to talk there. Suddenly, a girl with a very strange look looks at the first servant of our main character. From the very first second she is a servant, she is going to download her rights. Xuan further warns her that if she takes even one more step, she will have problems, and she should not consider herself special because of her superpowers, because she also has strength. Creating frightening illusions, Xuan declares himself her boss because she previously joined the master, and from now on she is Yun's sister to her. Next, the blonde understands that the person following this man simply cannot be ordinary. This girl looks harmless, but in fact, she has powerful strength. After the three stop, Dishin tells the girl that she does not need to disband her gang. She can continue to act as the leader, but she must pay every month. The girl in the leopard print top quickly agrees to the condition. She understands that even though she has become a subordinate, she still remains free except for monthly payments. But Dishin further reports that his first servant Xuan will inform her about the rest. In the future, she can contact her directly with all questions. Xuan, placing his hand on his chest, tells his master that he need not worry about his new servant because she will do everything. Next, the first servant of our protagonist asks how she awakened her power. The second servant replies that it happened recently. She was simply introduced to an awakening device. Hearing this, our main character Di-Sin thought about it because he had never heard of an awakening apparatus, which meant that the abilities were not obtained independently. Scratching her head, the blonde replied that she bought it for 30 million on the black market. She had to make a huge number of connections and spend the entire budget. Then they began to discuss this drug, with the help of which one could simply awaken superpowers in oneself. The blonde also added that she was sold a defective one because its success rate barely reached 40%, and if it failed, she could even die. Xuan, hearing the probability of 40%, is surprised how the blonde was not afraid to die. The blonde replied that in the underworld, if you are afraid, you will die quickly. Next, Di-Sin asked her if she was close to people who have abilities. The girl replied that she only knew a few people because of her father. But even despite the fact that now she herself has superpowers, contacting people who have abilities is still not so easy. Meanwhile, Mr. Di-Sin stated that they have very little information about people with abilities, so he wants to find them to get information. Next, this blonde, having the status of a servant, dared to ask what abilities the tyrant emperor and his first servant named Xuan had. Di-Sin replied that he had already answered this question by saying that he had the power of the Zhuanyuan secret technique and not a superpower, and his servant refused to reveal the power. The blonde, who felt a great sense of awkwardness, apologized for the awkward question and promised that she would not ask about it again. Looking at these two, she assumed that these two had a thing for people from the guild. He had a feeling that she had learned something incredible. Using not the lowest intelligence, the girl realized that judging by the huge abyss that formed from an empty place, this was some kind of illusion. And about our main character, she continued to think that most likely he controls energy, and a strong body is also a consequence of strengthening from such abilities. But the spell for cutting out the heart of our main character raised many questions from this girl, but he stopped thinking, realizing that it would be difficult to find out all this. Next, our main character began to head to his limousine, saying that it was already late and it was time for them to return to the hotel. Xuan silently followed him. Meanwhile, the blonde asked Xuan for her account number so that she could transfer 5 million to her, but the girl insisted on carrying out the transaction herself using her phone. After that, the blonde was surprised that they managed to find her at all. She realized that this girl was clearly not easy. Xuan was transferring money to herself at that time. However, while waiting for the money transfer, a notification appears that says that there are not enough funds on the balance, but they are not monsters, so they will accept installments. Meanwhile, our main character follows into his limousine, after which he settles into his seat and is going to wait for his servant to return to the hotel. Suddenly, our main character's spider sense is triggered, which notifies him a second before the incident that something very bad is going to happen right now. Next, the luxurious limousine in which our main character has just conveniently sat down explodes, forming a huge explosion due to which only the silhouette of the car is visible. No one expected this explosion. The servants who remained outside were watching the sudden huge explosion of the limousine in which our main character was. Seeing this incredible power of the explosion, Xuan immediately concludes that the fuel tank could not have exploded with such force, which means someone planted a bomb. If there was one there, she would have died. The blonde, watching the huge explosion, is surprised by the rapid development of events because she had just met her boss. She could not believe that her boss would die so stupidly. Suddenly, out of the smoke that formed due to the explosion, a car door flies out at incredible speed somewhere to the side. Further, from this hell that is going on in the limousine, the hand of our main character, who is trying to get up in order to get out of the limousine, is more visible. After his first servant sees that her master is alive, she rejoices, and the blonde, meanwhile, is surprised that he could survive after such a powerful explosion. Next, we watch Di-Sin, who, engulfed in flames, emerges from this huge explosion as if nothing had happened, but his hair stands on end. At this moment, Di-Sin realizes that he seriously underestimated modern weapons, because if it weren't for Zhuanyuan's technique that allows him to control the flames, he would have died. Tightly clenching his fist while engulfed in flames, our protagonist realizes that he has not been so humiliated for a very long time. At this moment, his two servants saw him as a furious wild beast who froze and was waiting for the moment to throw him at the victim and tear him to pieces. After the smoky curtain clears, the girls see Di-Sin with a naked torso looking at the blonde. She asks if he suspects her of this explosion. She raises her hands and begins to justify herself that she could not have caused the explosion of this car because she was next to him all this time. The cold-blooded Sigma predator, looking at this girl in a calm voice, says that he knows that this explosion is not her doing. Next, Xuan tells the blonde that one person announced a reward for the murders of His Majesty on the Shadow Network, but that person has already died. Xuan continues saying that this is not the first attempt on her master's life. What if the blonde says that an advertisement on the darknet is not a problem? Next, this girl looks at our main character a little playfully and asks what he is going to do with this explosion. Dishin replies that it would be impolite not to reciprocate, which is why the two of them will investigate about this explosion, and then he will see who dared to do this. The course of events is interrupted and we move to the next day, or rather to the evening of the next day. It is already dark in the yard. Then we watch as Xuan with her laptop announces that she has found this man. This is Li Shuo, a local hooligan from the 18th district. The cameras filmed his crime. Calmly, Sigma asks his servant to check his call history and banking transactions. They will look at who he interacted with and perhaps find the one who forced him to do this. In the next frame, we watch as the blonde and her people found and captured Li Shuo. She gives the order to lock him up and wait for her to arrive. Next, Xuan notifies His Majesty that quite recently, a large sum of money was received into Li Shuo's account. She adds that the sender can be verified. Meanwhile, the blonde interrogates this nerd, forcing him to reveal everything he knows while she is in a good mood. The nerd replies that he knows nothing. While the blonde was interrogating, our hacker Xuan found out that all this was the work of an old cat, or rather Dai Kuicheng. He is the owner of the bank account from which the money was sent. Meanwhile, the leader of the Blue Dragon Gang orders his men to send Li Shuo to the hospital and keep a close eye on him. Then she thinks that she heard this nickname somewhere. She remembers that there was one group that, only after arriving here, became popular because of its weapons. Meanwhile, these two come to the same decision. They understand that the case of the explosion lies on the shoulders of the president of the Hixen Foreign Trade Corporation. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted again, and we move to the same foreign trade corporation, Hixen, where this bastard is apparently located. Apparently right now it is he who is leading some kind of meeting. He is going to hold the results of today's meeting. The man says that the first failure can be called an ordinary accident because the rookie sniper killer was inattentive during his part-time job and died from a super ability. This man in a jacket continues the conversation by saying that the responsibility for such an outcome lies entirely on his shoulders because he behaved unprofessionally. Next, we watch a recent incident and hear that this corporation conducted an investigation during which they made a rough assessment of this guy's strength. However, the guy continued by saying that they also failed with the next attempt because they believed that his strength was in changes in his body, but it turned out that he was invulnerable to explosions. Next, the meeting participants began to say that this goal exceeded all their expectations, and one team could not cope, so they must immediately complete the operation. However, the man sitting at the very end immediately abandoned the idea of stopping. Because it's not about money, their first task is to destroy the Superman, and they must complete it. Next, this Rambo cosplayer, who is the very president of the company named Dai Yuchen, says that the situation needs to be continued, because he knows better that he is a Superman. Budget Rambo continues saying that they don't need to be afraid because they always kill with one hit. He suggests using a chemical poison bomb next time. Rambo continues by saying that the most reliable way would be to detonate a bomb in the hotel room where our main character stays at night. This indoor Rambo continues to say that if they fail again this time, he will personally deal with this guy with his huge sword, if you know what I mean. President Dai's desire to personally participate in the operation greatly worries the members of the corporation, because if he enters the battle, it will be a confirmation of their severe helplessness. An alarm goes off in this office, which means that someone has broken into this building. Everyone around begins to panic. They blame the city in which something happens every day. Meanwhile, the indoor Rambo, or the president of the corporation, demands that his employees show him the cameras. He wants to see which rat got through this time. After this, Rambo sees the image from the cameras. He realizes that the very same task object and his two servants got into his corporation. After some time, the indoor Rambo is corrected by saying that these three did not sneak up and burst in by helicopter through the main entrance. Meanwhile, Dishin is ready to break. Next, we move to not far from what happened about a few hours ago. These three are discussing that Dishin is being hunted by a murder corporation. They are sure that the one they are looking for is here. Approaching the building, these three are surprised that this building does not at all look like the headquarters of the killers. The blonde explains that this was done on purpose, because if it were otherwise, they would be easy to identify. Then all three of them froze before entering this building. Two servants of our main character could not decide which of them would go first. Xuan began to push the blonde so that she would be the first to enter the building. Her argument was that she, being a fragile girl, could not go there. and His Majesty especially should not go first. However, our main character Sigma, continuing to maintain his trademark calm, tells the girls that the two of them should not rush. The next moment we watch as the blonde lifts the car above her head and announces that first they need to say hello. After this girl says this, she makes her welcoming gesture. That is, she throws the car straight into this building. The three plan to rush in and defeat them after they had carefully planned and calculated everything. After all, only by intimidating can you defeat the tiger. Meanwhile, chaos began inside the corporation. Everyone was busy increasing the quality of protection. Armed soldiers in tuxedos blocked the entrance to the hall, and the others thought that these three would enter through the only entrance, so their task was to hold them back. Immediately after one of the soldiers saw three silhouettes in the smoky curtain, he immediately opened blind fire in that direction. He also notified others about the silhouettes. After some time, the smoke began to clear, and they watched as the reincarnated man defended himself from a barrage of bullets with the help of a torn piece of asphalt. After these brainless guards saw that their barrage of bullets was of no help and that this woman didn't care at all, they began to panic but could not retreat. While these three guards were clumsily distracted, the blonde in the form of a dragon lunged and knocked out one of the guards with a kick. After Xuan saw that despite the large number of people and weapons, Long Qing dealt with them in a second, she praised her colleague. The girl in turn replied that some weaklings simply could not lead such a dangerous gang as the Blue Dragon clan. Meanwhile, Long Qing asked permission from His Majesty if she could go in the vanguard. Our main character thought that Long Qing was brave but not reckless. Long Qing said that the first floor is still a foreign trade corporation, so the defense is still weak and they should go down even lower. After this girl with blonde hair said their next goal was to go down a couple of floors, she performed a powerful kick to the floor. Even though this girl tried to break the floor with her kick, she achieved nothing other than raising smoke. She realized that the floor was made of something durable. After Longqing realized that they couldn't go down the direct route, she immediately ran to the elevator and tried to open the doors to get to the elevator shaft. After she opened the elevator doors with her brute physical strength, she discovered the elevator itself, which was located on the floor below. Next, Longqing, without thinking for a long time about her next move, made a powerful blow to the top of the elevator to send it down. After she really sent the elevator to the lowest floor with a powerful kick of her foot, she looked at the elevator shaft and said that elevators are for suckers. Then she again, without hesitation, jumped straight into the elevator shaft and, with the help of deft jumps along the walls of the shaft, began to rapidly descend down. Seeing this, Xuan immediately got scared and wondered how she would go down then, but Sigma had everything in his hands. He took the girl by the waist and told her to hold on tight. After Xuan grabbed Dishan tightly without thinking at all, he jumped straight into the elevator shaft, not bouncing off the walls but simply falling like a stone. A couple of moments later, the three of them found themselves on the lowest floor. Xuan noticed that Longqing had taken the elevator with her during her fall. She praised her for her resourcefulness. A moment later, Longqing, who had an impressive intellectual level, decided to throw the elevator fragment forward along the corridor, thereby revealing the traps. Pointing her finger at the deadly laser beams, Longqing informed her master that she would no longer be able to cope with this. However, our main character clearly had a different opinion. He explained with his gaze that she would deal with him. Longqing, saying that she was joking, said that she could handle it. Next, the girl plucked up courage and went forward straight to the traps. Despite the fact that the lasers had a strong cutting ability, her scales were still harder. After some time, Longqing decided to use the elevator that she had brought with her, and with its help she was still able to overcome the laser corridor. Meanwhile, the nerds who were sitting somewhere in a safe place began to panic. Because these three were able to pass through the laser corridor, they realized that they could not be stopped. However, some big shot with blonde hair sitting on a chair with an important look argued that they had no need to worry because there were still a lot of security measures ahead. The guy continued saying that despite the fact that their traps are not very effective, it is worth considering that the powers of superhumans are also not limitless. Meanwhile, people from the corporation used thermal bombs, which also could not stop our main characters. Next, Longqing took a fighting stance, and our Sigma used the technique of his dragon shield to protect himself and Xuan. The zero temperature was turned on. The next step of the corporation was to protect the boss by releasing a kamikaze squad that ran towards our main characters at breakneck speed. Meanwhile, the security department began to understand more and more clearly that they had no chance of containing these three, and they also had no way to escape. Lin Qing, after going through many traps alone and taking a lot of blows, was completely exhausted. Shiden put his hand on her shoulder, telling her that she could rest. Meanwhile, the security department says that their situation is very bad, because in a few moments this crowd will burst into them. This trio had already reached the main door, which was the last support of these people. The superhumans mercilessly dealt with this door, creating dents. The entire department of the corporation, except for the indoor Rambo, was in a panic. They asked the boss what they should do because they are very strong and they are about to burst in here. But their boss was silent. Next, the boss of the corporation, feeling like a hero of this manhwa or in the edit, took out his sword and demanded from his employees that they organize silence in the hall. Looking at his pathetic workers who were panicking like hysterics, he told them that in critical situations, it is necessary to maintain composure and a cool head. The critical moment had come. These three finally broke through the last layer of protection and burst into the office. The blow that broke the door was so strong that it sent the door flying. 1/10 of a second after these three entered the room, everyone around the indoor Rambo disappeared as if they had never existed. And after 0.2 seconds, this indoor Rambo, showing us the perfect abs, jumped up in order to make a powerful blow in the direction where these three came from. After 0.3 seconds, the boss of this murder corporation lunged towards these three mysterious silhouettes who were again in the smoke. Having landed after his blow, which did not cause them any damage, he said that his guys still could not entertain them as expected. When the smoke finally cleared, we watched Dishin and the two servants behind him. Sigma asked the guy if he was the leader of the Haisha company branch. Suddenly, Len Qing noticed the sword that the indoor Rambo was holding. It looked like the lightsaber of weaklings in November. The girl continued by saying that this sword is not simple as it seems at first glance, because it is much more powerful than the lasers that were in the laser corridor. Meanwhile, even Xuan noticed this sword. She told everyone to be careful because this is Dai Yucheng's special weapon. A high-frequency sword, it can cut anyone very easily. This man further confirmed Di Xing's words by saying that he was indeed the leader of the Haisha branch, named Dai Yushin, or the Old Cat as many called him. After our main character was convinced that he had found who he was looking for, he first of all asked Len Qing if she could continue to fight. Leng Qing did not become a hero, and admitted to her master Gigachad that she had no strength left after the traps. Di Xin allowed her to rest while he dealt with him. Meanwhile, the crowd opposite our main character, confident in their victory, asked our main characters what their last words would be. Meanwhile, unfortunately for these idiots, our main character heard his opponents babbling about his last words and asked if that was what they meant. Indoor Rambo added that if they have not yet chosen words, then they can give them a little more time to think about it. Our main character was pleasantly surprised by such impudence because he had not heard anything like this addressed to him for many years. In the meantime, he began to call on his strength. Next, our main character sent a test discharge to a small part of his forces to check whether his opponents were worth his time. This weak charge of our main character's power was enough to take the little things that were around the indoor Rambo by surprise. He, in turn, did not understand what was happening. This seemingly weak charge of power for our protagonist turned out to be almost fatal for the guards who stood next to the boss of the corporation. After our main character Di Xin got rid of everyone except the corporation boss, he informed him that the battlefield had been cleared for them, and they could begin the fight. The indoor Rambo got tired of playing by the rules of our Gigachad, and he rushed with his sword at the ready to cut Di Xin into pieces. Before making the jump towards our main character, this guy used his superpowers to take the form of a rat. But it was not difficult for our main character to simply move back with a slight movement to escape the furious attack of the boss of the murder corporation. After Di Xin escaped his opponent's first attack, he immediately began preparing a counterattack that would most likely end this fight. However, due to his transformation into an animal form, our protagonist's opponent's reflexes and sense of smell became sharper, and he saw the attack that he was preparing. Immediately after this guy made a second strike in order to interrupt the counterattack of our main character, and he succeeded. Meanwhile, Di Xin again avoided another blow from the Sith's lightsaber. While dodging, he thought that he had a very quick reaction because he was able to interrupt his attack. From the beginning of this battle until now, the two servants of the Tyrant Emperor were watching this. Leng Qing noticed that Rambo had the same transformation ability as her. However, the two couldn't figure out whether the boss of the company had turned into a cat or a rat, which made the two laugh. Xuan said if it was a cat, then it would be more difficult for the master. Xuan explained her assumption by saying that, in addition to their innate dexterity, cats have another innate advantage in the form of their eyes. To be even more specific, the advantage of this guy's eyes was that his viewing angle can reach up to 200 degrees, and his visual reaction is 6 times higher than that of a human. It was because of this feature or advantage that this guy managed to attack our main character, thereby knocking down his attacks. But at some point, Dishin got tired of trying to hit him from the rear and he went head-on, stopping the incredibly sharp sword with a blow of his hand. While the fight continued, the two maids continued to discuss that what they see with their own eyes slows down for cats by 1/6, or something similar to the speed of a bullet. Despite the amazing reaction and speed of our main character, this bastard still managed to hook Dishin a couple of times. After stopping for a few moments, the Rambo cat praised Dishin, saying that he reacts quickly and knows when to retreat, otherwise his hand would be useless. Next, the boss of the murder corporation points with his second hand at his sword and says that Dishin is the first who dared to go hand-to-hand against his sword. He asked Dishin what it was like to fight manually against a sword. Dishin replied that he actually made his task a little more difficult in a sense. Meanwhile, Sigma carried out an analysis and realized that Dai Yu Cheng's super strength lies not only in increasing the reaction speed, but he also predicts movements. In addition, Dishin understood that his body and Qi energy could not withstand his sword because it complements its master, but the master only liked the difficult conditions. Seeing a small wound on his finger, Daishin informs his opponent that he managed to rekindle in him a long-forgotten thirst for battle. However, our main character further stated that, unfortunately for him, the test is over and now he will not have any chance to attack. Rambo was shocked. Finally, Dishin stopped holding back. He developed such enormous speed that for his opponent, it seemed that there were simply dozens of opponents around him. Making incredibly fast movements around the indoor Rambo, Dishin asked him if he was fast enough to strike him now. Then this poor guy, who completely stopped understanding what was happening around him, was attacked by a bunch of attacks from all sides. He was confused by this development of events. However, thanks to the effects of his transformation, he could still barely resist the barrage of attacks from our protagonist, but it was harder and harder for him. Trying to draw some conclusion, the man did not understand why Dishin's strikes continued to accelerate. Because of this, he was constantly forced to block without a chance to attack. Leng Qing, who was watching the battle, said that this was actually a dragon strike, and before that, His Majesty took pity on her. Next, we see a picture of how our main character, imitating Jotaro Kujo's stand, began to perform a powerful barrage of hand-to-hand strikes. With each subsequent blow, it became more and more difficult for his opponent to block these series of merciless blows. Continuing his flurry of blows, our main character realized that his opponent was exhausted, and right now he had a chance to finish this fight. Next, Dishin stopped his barrage of hand-to-hand blows. The indoor Rambo did not immediately understand what had happened, but he was very happy that the attacks had stopped. After the man stood back up, he asked Mr. Dishin if he had said that he would not have a chance to attack. Having said this remark, the joyful boss of the corporation, making a quick dash towards Mr. Dishin, seemed to inflict a serious injury on him. What happened next surprised even our main character's rival himself, because this bastard's sword was covered in blood, and Rambo began to shake. The master's servants watching the battle smelled something fried. They could not believe that their master had missed a serious blow. Next, the frame switches to a close-up of Dishin. Judging by his face, we understand that his opponent really hit him with the last attack. Despite the fact that the lunge was made right at Dishin's heart, and the hit was direct, our main character continued to stand on his feet, and moreover, he grabbed the sword with his left hand. Finally stabbing the sword into Dishin's body, the guy with the laser lightsaber couldn't believe it. But suddenly he realized that his sword was stuck and he couldn't move. Then something very surprising happens. Despite the injury, Dishin raises his opponent with the help of the sword with which he is pierced, sir. Say that a person should not rely on weapons. What the boss of the murder corporation saw at that moment frightened him to the point of horror, because in addition to being lifted by his own sword, he saw a blue dragon behind Daishin's back. Then Rambo realized that his affairs were very bad. He lets go of his Sith lightsaber and tries to move away from Dishin as quickly as possible. A moment later, despite the enemy's attempt to leave, our protagonist finally delivers his famous dragon kick with a power of 1 ton, thereby introducing Rambo to the wall. After Daishin sends the indoor Rambo to communicate with the wall, he quickly removes the lightsaber from his heart with a quick movement of his hand. Next, he puts his hand to the wound site, and with a light touch of his hand, stops the loss of blood. Despite the fact that Rambo's hand was slightly grazed, his hand was already almost useless. He understands that if he had not let go of his sword, he would already be dead. After Dishin looks at his disarmed opponent, he briefly says that he fought quite well. The respect for the Emperor's opponent is immediately visible. Watching this battle, the Emperor's first maid Xuan begins to feel a lot of pain in her heart because she thought that His Majesty was pierced with a sword. Turning to his two maids, the guy asks them if they had a rest, because he has already disarmed him and now they can finish him off because he is safe. These two were clearly shocked that their master, out of the blue, ordered them to finish off his rival because he himself could have easily done it. Holding the sword in his hands, Gigachad thinks that he now has too few people, Shang Sayan and Long Qing, and only the second has a little combat experience. He begins to miss Empress Su. And he also begins to miss the art of controlling puppets that belong to that same Empress Su. Next, we watch the disarmed boss of the corporation. At this time, the maids discuss that they are a little worried because this is the first time they are entering into a serious fight. Looking at his two rivals, the guy is surprised at the impudence of Di Xin, who is going to kill him with the help of two girls, one of whom is barely alive. However, the girls have the opposite opinion. They believe that they are underestimated. Shang Xuan asks the guy what will happen if they give a surprise. Next, Len Qing lunges with a powerful jab, which unfortunately misses. Rambo continues to repeat that their attempts to win are in vain. Shang Xuan understands that His Majesty is not acting rashly. If he thinks carefully, this guy's skills have already been sorted out, so all that remains is to keep an eye on him. Next, Xuan makes a conclusion during which she understands that the enemy is the one who is in front of her eyes, which is why she summons a huge hologram of a snake. While Dai Yucheng was distracted by a huge snake, Len Qing managed to climb behind him to attack from behind. This time a powerful high kick lands on this bastard, and he has enough force to send Rambo flying back into the jungle. Before the guy can land normally, this crazy duet of two girls creates the appearance that a whole crowd of Len Qings are running towards the guy. Having risen, Rambo discovers that a whole flurry of huge purple snakes is flying at him, but he cannot dodge because he does not know which of them is real. Next, this barrage of snakes simultaneously digs into this bastard, causing him a ton of pain. There was no escape from this blow. In fact, the source of the pain was not the snakes at all because they were just illusions. The source of the pain was Leng Qing, who behind those snakes struck a hidden blow. With the help of this incredibly strong combo, which is very difficult to counter with anything, Rambo begins to earn extra money as a cleaner, wiping the floor with his face. Meanwhile, the head of the corporation was lying on the floor and was in a deep sleep because his strength had dissipated. Shang Xuan, meanwhile, appeared because she was invisible. Next, Len Qing takes this scoundrel who caused a lot of trouble by the collar and is about to finish him off with a powerful blow, but Di Xin stops her, asking her to bring him to him. Finding himself at the feet of our protagonist, he slowly returns to consciousness. Leng Qing hands him over to his master, while Sigma examines his sword. Continuing to evaluate the blade, Di Xin states that his blade is indeed very good. He remembers that in this world he does not yet have a blade. The barely alive head of the company is trying to understand what Di Xin is getting at. He is only trying to guess what they are going to do to him, but he is interrupted by His Majesty. Next, our main character once again uses his cutting technique. Dai Xin tells this guy that he wants to make him his subordinate. After using the technique, our main character gets up from his chair and extends his hand to the kneeling man. Rambo asks him if he thinks that he will really agree. Instead of persuasion, our main character tells this guy to try to refuse. Then he explains that if he does not obey, he will experience pain similar to when your heart is cut out. Next, the guy, putting his hand on his forehead, says that he is really interested in finding out how long he will last if he refuses. Rambo replies that he cannot become a subordinate. As our main character said, immediately after disobedience, this man experiences simply terrifying pain, as if right now his flesh is being torn into pieces. Pointing his palm at this poor fellow, Mr. Di Xin asks whether he still refuses, or whether he has changed his mind. A moment later, Di Xin cancels the technique, and the guy, glad that it is over, says that this pain is nonsense, because he thought that it would take his life. Next, Di Xin sits back on the chair and assures Rambo that pain can also influence the will of people. He asks him if he wants to check it. A moment later, the barrage of terrible pain continues, but it is much worse than before. He understands that he is about to be torn apart. He really wants to die to get rid of the pain. Watching the terrible torment of the guy, Di Xin notices that he is holding on for a long time. He continues to say that he is noticeably stronger than Len Qing. Meanwhile, the man lying at the master's feet asks to stop this pain, because he has already agreed to become a subordinate. He is already trembling from pain. Hearing this man agree to join his ranks of servants, Di Xin, with a deft movement of his hands, cancels the heartbreaking spell. Rambo agrees to be a subordinate. He warns that in order to control the members of his organization, a force was placed in his body that would tear a person apart in case of betrayal. The man noticed that he had just thought about betrayal, but he still did not explode. He assumed that everything would be fine. Suddenly, Shang Xuan turns to the old cat, saying that something is wrong with his skin. It begins to crack and heat up. After the indoor Rambo realizes that because of betrayal he is about to explode, he screams heart-rendingly to be saved because he does not want to die. Next, we watch as our main character instantly jumps up from his chair and moves to a guy who is about to explode. He understands that the company has the same method of control. A moment later, Daishin picks up the old cat by his jacket and tells him that if he is going to die, then let him do it somewhere else. He also summons the Dragon of Darkness. After our main character calls upon the true Dragon of Darkness, who descended from the stormy skies, he rushes together with this man into the sky, thereby deflecting the explosion. This storm Dragon of Darkness is so powerful and fast that it breaks through many walls in a matter of seconds and rushes to the skies without any problems. Then, flying out of the building, the Thunder Dragon manages to rush high into the sky, and only at this moment does this man explode due to an unknown force of control. Watching this spectacle, Shang Xuan is once again shocked by the coolness of her master. Leng Qing continues to be amazed at her strength, no matter whether he is a real Dixin or not. Suddenly, the course of events moves to some very high-tech room, in which scientists notice that an explosion has occurred at the coordinates of 22 degrees north longitude. Analyzing the power of this explosion, scientists conclude that the power of this explosion is approaching anomalous, because over the past 6 months it has been the most powerful explosion. These scientists did not expect that these worms would make so much noise, but the indicated target is at least an anomalous level. It is not so high as to report to the top. Meanwhile, the course of events accelerates and we are transported to the morning of the next day, or more precisely, we are transported back to the hotel. Moving inside, we watch as Shang Xuan, being very tired, falls onto the bed and buries her head into the pillow. Shang Xuan is so tired due to the fact that they were busy all night, she is leaning into this bed and is ready to fall asleep right now. Emperor Dixin thinks that some group of petty assassins has made him very tense. He understands that the issue of summoning Empress Su needs to be put on the agenda. Next, our main character informs his first servant that he is going to summon Empress Su because he needs even more people for comfort. When Shang Xuan realizes what her master just said, she shudders that His Majesty has finally decided to use the Fantasy Devourer ability. Tired Sigma asks the servant why she is surprised, because now there are not enough people and they do not fully understand the nature of superhumans, and the Empress is the best option. He continues saying that Empress Su was an excellent assistant. He adds that this is extremely important to him, so she needs to try harder. Next, the girl obeys her master with all her appearance and reports that she will immediately begin to implement her master's plan. Seeing the fighting spirit of his servant, our main character smiles and says that he is pleased with the fighting spirit of his servant. Suddenly, Dixin says something that Shang Xuan really doesn't like. He tells her to put aside her dream and start summoning Empress Su right now. Hearing this request, Xuan begs her master to take pity on her, because she is just an ordinary girl with abilities who needs sleep. The course of events is transferred to Long Qing's house. We watch as she trains hard with a heavy projectile. She hopes to catch up with Dixin or at least hold back his blow. Suddenly, the diligent training of a girl with long blonde hair is interrupted by a servant approaching her and telling her that Sister Yun is calling her. The servant, looking at the punching bag, realizes that in addition to sand, there are metal shavings inside it, which makes it several hundred times heavier than a punching bag. An ordinary person will break his arm after the first blow to this bag, and the boss calmly trains for the second hour. Meanwhile, Long Qing answers the call. On the phone, she is told that she needs to broadcast live and apologize to His Majesty. The girl asks what this is for. Xuan explains that it takes a long time to explain, but in a nutshell, their master is going to call his beloved concubine into reality, and her ether is the first stage. Having hit the pair, one of the girl's gang members flies away. The girl is warned that the broadcast is very important, and under no circumstances should she screw up. Next, Long Qing says that they shouldn't worry because she understood everything. Looking around, she realizes that her employee has disappeared somewhere. Looking at the floor, she sees that she accidentally killed her gang member with the help of her heavy punching bag. She doesn't understand this and asks him why he lay down. Coming to his senses, the guy tells his boss that he finally managed to contact the Super Guild. The girl asks if they agreed to get in touch. The guy reports that the members of the Super Guild said that they need to hold a meeting in order to come up with a decision, and this will take from 3 to 5 days. Next, the course of events moves to some night bar where two dudes came. They wonder if they didn't give the Blue Dragon enough to understand what's what. However, the guy with long hair is not interested in this because they were given money in order to answer something. These two confidently enter the night bar. But when they enter a night bar, they realize that something terrible has happened inside. There is chaos and bodies everywhere. And at the end of the corridor, there is a guy with black hair. Looking around, they understand that this entire night bar is engulfed in hellish flames, and they need to run away as quickly as possible. But behind them, there was already a killer from the mantle. Literally a moment later, this mysterious killer in a robe deprives these two poor fellows who came just to talk of their lives by running blades across their necks. The killer who recently killed 2 people says that this is not enough for him, but the guy with black hair speaking to the killer as Ji Yun asks him to be more adequate. Next, the two take a photo of the bodies and send it to their boss, reporting that they have already destroyed the target of the task. The guy with red hair praises him for a good job. Then the course of events is interrupted, and we again move to the Bright Hotel. Shang Xuan reports that the first stage of preparation for the summoning of the Empress has been prepared. Meanwhile, a gigachad reading a book about self-development from scratch will grab his first servant, saying that she did a good job. Sitting at her laptop, the girl understands that as soon as the stream starts, her guys will begin to promote the theme of the arrival of Emperor Dixin. The more people believe, the greater the chances. Next, Zhuan turns to our main character, saying that he will most likely have to do a little work on camera, and he will easily find himself in a hot search. Dixin, angrily closing the book, asks his first servant if he understood correctly that she wants him to pretend to be an actor. The girl immediately begins to deny everything that her master said. She says that she will simply create a hologram of His Majesty that will do everything for him. Our gigachad liked this option noticeably more, and he continued reading Sigma's guide on how to live without women. After this heated dialogue, the girl realizes that she is, as it were, in the same cage with a tiger, and she should carefully watch her words. Suddenly, the phone in their room starts ringing. Xuan gets up from his desk to answer. Picking up the phone, Shang Xuan hears how he is notified that in the hall a certain Mrs. Wen Meiyu says that she has come to them. Xuan is asked if they know each other. Xuan quickly asks her owner if she should go up, receiving a nod in response. Xuan will be informed by phone that she will be given permission to go up to her room. Next, the girl asks her master if he knows her. Dixin replies that this is the manager from that luxurious restaurant who served them food. Suddenly, Xuan depicts the famous painting and reminds the gentleman that he owes this woman 20,000. She asks how he could let her in if she came for money. Once again closing the leadership of Sigma, Dixin says that she is not the kind of person who will persecute him for 20,000. He is sure that she has another purpose for the visit. Looking down, the girl tells her master that he does not understand the cruel nature of capitalism at all. A couple of moments later, the doors to our main character's room open, and in front of us is a previously familiar woman from a luxurious restaurant. After that, this woman, still in the same luxurious dress and with outstanding forms, walks into the depths of the room. Xuan does not understand how she got up so quickly. After a while, a girl with big eyes greets those inside and reminds that she is the manager of the Haitian restaurant, and a few days ago they visited them. Next, this girl is immediately attacked by the first servant of our main character, who says that she knows who she is and she probably came for the money. Shang Xuan continues to attack the girl, citing many reasons why they did not specifically squeeze these 20,000. She continues to attack the poor woman. Xuan is so sure that this woman has come for money that she pushes her out the door and tries to close her, despite the fact that the woman says that the account has long been reset. Suddenly, the girl mentions that at that time, there was a man with them with whom they talked about cooperation. Hearing this, Dixin becomes interested in the conversation. The woman continues the story by saying that the Haitian restaurant belongs to the Fengchuang Corporation, but this corporation owns another larger organization known as Fengchuang. The girl continues her inspired speech, saying that today she received an order from the main company to invite them to take part in the Star 5 project. The woman continues the story by saying that this project is intended to attract public attention to a team of 5 superhumans. And she came because the gentleman's abilities ideally correspond to their criteria, and in addition to this, he has a very aesthetic component. Daishin doesn't understand at all what he's talking about. He looks questioningly at his servant, asking about a team of superhuman celebrities. The girl replies that this is a group of idols made up of superhumans. The woman states that after hearing this for the first time, she was also surprised because previously they considered superhumans to be an ordinary urban legend, but now their population is developing. Joanne, with a dissatisfied look, says that all this sounds great, but why is she, being a restaurant manager, coming in as an envoy from the entertainment industry? After the first servant asks this woman such an obvious question, she is immediately lost for words and cannot form a single sentence, starting to get nervous. Next, Xuan tells Dixin that this woman is confused. Even in her own words, she looks very unreliable, but she asks for her master's opinion. The guy wonders why he is so easily called into an industry that is very difficult to get into. He understands that reality is really interesting, The girl reports that a quick answer is not necessary. Having heard that he has offered to familiarize himself with the company before making a decision, he closes the guide on how to be a Sigma and agrees to this proposal. Next, the course of events moves to the Fengchuan Corporation, which is located in a huge skyscraper. It's a clear day outside. Entering this place of amazing size, people seem almost like ants. Juan does not understand why this place is larger than a football field and why there are many robots here. Meanwhile, Dixin silently examines the possessions of this corporation. He understands that everything that is here is incomparable to his palace, but still this says something about the strength of the company. Suddenly, Shang Xuan, seeing a random poster, realizes that she has already heard the name of this factory, because this is a factory of stars that has created a huge number of industry legends. Suddenly, the enthusiastic servant of our protagonist is interrupted and corrected by saying that it would be more correct to say that this factory is a dream, not a dream. In front of us stands an unremarkable guy with glasses. Seeing Daishin, he introduces himself as the president's secretary. He was asked to come and greet and then conduct our Sigma. Then these three, having gathered a crowd, continue to follow the president's secretary, who in turn continues to escort them to the president of this company. After some time, these two reach the very president's office, right inside which there is a swimming pool and a golf course right in the office. Daishin again compares the possessions with his own. At this moment, we are watching the president of this place, who is playing golf at this moment. Looking at Daishin, he says that his image met his expectations. The guy with red hair continues saying that he is the first person who behaves so casually in his office. Next, our main character makes a reciprocal remark saying that he is also the first person there to talk to the emperor himself. Xuan is very tense at this moment. Next, the president, considering this gesture a joke, laughed loudly, extended his hand for a handshake and said that he was pleased to meet you, and his name is Yu Sen, or simply President Yu. However, our main character is still an emperor with great power, so he doesn't even come close to shaking someone's dirty hand, so he just watches. His first servant comes to his rescue, shakes the president's hand and politely introduces herself. She says that Daishin's agent is with her and all questions need to be addressed to her. Meanwhile, the girl continues to be very tense, because the fact that the president communicates with His Majesty in such a way can make him angry, which obviously will not lead to good. At this time, our main character, using critical thinking with a cool expression on his face, assumes that his servant has already made him fake documents. Next, President Yu, placing his hands at his sides, says that most likely they have already been told that he plans to create an idol group of superhumans. Xuan says that they know a little. President Yu concludes that since they came, it means they are interested in the proposal, so he invited them to sit down and leisurely discuss all the details. After some time, we move to the negotiating table. Xuan suggests that President Yu, since they are talking about work, should immediately get down to business. Shang Xuan explains this by saying that their emperor does not like to beat around the bush. Instead, he prefers to get to the point as quickly as possible. Taking out a monocle from somewhere, the president expresses his opinion that it seems to him that it is better for him to personally discuss such an important matter with the emperor. However, the first servant of our protagonist is no stranger, so she deftly parries all the pathetic arguments of the president and says that she has the right to represent her emperor. However, President Yu, who does not want to argue further, still accepts the girl's position, saying that Mr. Daishin must trust her very much. Next, this chatterbox President Yu finally gets down to business, saying that he has already familiarized himself with the plan, so he will not go into details. He will immediately familiarize him with the paired plan. President Yu continues by saying that they were inspired by the Emperor's discussions about the tyrant, so he made an exclusive plan to promote Mr. Daishin. Handing over a bunch of papers, President Yu says that this plan can be called a hit-and-miss plan, in which you need to play a character from a novel that the readers loved, roughly speaking, to play Daishin. Shang Xuan is terribly surprised that the Emperor is being forced to pretend to be himself right now. She does not believe that such coincidences exist. The president continues the conversation by saying that the guy has Daishin's appearance and character at the highest level. The only thing he lacks is a strong marketing team. Next, President Yu with red hair stands in front of our main character and tells him that if he doesn't like something, he can say so. However, unexpectedly, Daishin replies that he is satisfied with everything and asks President Yu to continue to outline his plan. Meanwhile, Shang Xuan says that His Majesty is just seriously thinking about everything he said. At this time, she is offended because he promised to discuss everything with her, but in the end, he does not pay attention. Next, another robot consultant comes to President Yu and hands him a form of paper. President Yu reports that this is an exclusive plan and agreement for Mr. Daishin. After the man with red hair receives this form, he immediately places it on the table opposite Di Xin, with the Morning Dawn Project second copy written on it. Meanwhile, while our main character picks up this very form, President Yu continues to say that he is very suitable for them, so the cooperation is mutually beneficial. Further, our main character, without even opening this form of paper, passes it to his first servant Shang Xuan so that she can familiarize herself with the contents. Reading the contract, she sees that they are provided with a car, a house, and 100 million immediately after signing. She understands that large companies are on a different level, and the contract is signed down to the details. But this girl has one question. She asks the president if he has enough people for this plan. The president replies that he does not recruit ordinary people. Hearing this can be said as an insult, Shang Xuan pouts strongly, saying in her thoughts that she is actually a real Superman. Next, our main character asks his slave if she is so interested in this. She quickly answers that no, because with the master's character she cannot be an actress. Suddenly, our main character tells the president, since he is a representative of this company, he has seen a lot. Are small details appropriate? Because this forces him to doubt his sincerity. Hearing this not groundless accusation, President Yu laughs and says that Mr. Dai is indeed well informed, but he asks to forgive these handouts because he has prepared something else. He suddenly becomes much darker and tells our main character that people like him, in addition to money and power, most of all crave power. Next, President Yu changes his tone and asks our main character, if he gives him power, will he be able to refuse? After hearing this, our main character folds his hands in front of him and asks the president from this part to tell more about what he means. However, before explaining, he asked our protagonist what type of ability he possesses, awakened or artificial. Our main character, Sigma, in negotiations, asks him if he should first tell about himself before asking such questions. Having heard this presentation, President Yu concludes that our main character does not understand the system of superpowers at all. Even though people recognize the existence of a big explosion, understanding the abilities there is no one yet. President Yu further explains that all information about superpowers is confidential in Fengchuan, but if it helps gain the master's trust, then he is willing to reveal a little. The mysterious president of the campaign begins the explanation by saying that superhumans are divided into those who awaken themselves and those who did it artificially. In addition to this, there are also unique ones. The president continues his speech about superpowers by saying that the most popular is the ability to transform the body and change shape. Next on the list of hit frequency popularity is energy control, that is, the use of energy in a variety of ways. Body transformation, as the name suggests, causes changes in the body, such as faster reactions, increased strength, and so on. Some are able to use other people's features. And energy control, in turn, is control over light, electricity, water, and other forces, if the transformative type is aimed at changing oneself, and control at management. Listening to this entertaining story, Xuan wonders if there are only two types, but His Majesty's abilities do not fit into either of these categories, just like her ability. Next, President Yu says that in addition to these two types, there is a group of people whose abilities cannot be attributed to any of the groups. This group is classified as a mysterious type. The man continues by saying that everyone who belongs to the mysterious type awakened naturally, but these powers can be very diverse, for example, frying eggs in your hand.